Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you a unique way that you can use all of those extra rubber bands that you have laying around the house to decorate your Easter eggs. So here's just a sampling of the ones that I made, and of course there are a million different color choices and band placement options you can use to personalize your own eggs. Aside from your hard-boiled eggs, you're going to need some boiling water, and you're going to need a half a cup for each color. So, for example, if you were going to make 6 colors, you would make sure that you boiled enough water to be left over with 3 cups. You're going to need some type of container for each different color, and the ones that I'm using are just some cheap plastic cups that I think I picked up at Walmart. You're going to need something to measure 1/2 cup increments. As I said, you'll need half a cup for each color. You're going to need some white vinegar and also something that can measure 1 teaspoon. So for every color you will use 1 teaspoon of the vinegar. I'm going to be using 2 different kinds of food coloring. I have the regular colors and then also the neon colors. And of course you can buy the little tablets if you got one of those little Easter kits that has the tablets. And in that case you would just follow whatever instructions they give you for how much water and vinegar to use. And then lastly you're going to need your rubber bands. So I'm honestly not sure what brand of rubber bands I used because these were just kind of mismatched ones that I had left over from doing other projects. But I do find if you can find some that have a little bit of a flatness to them, they seem to work out a little bit better than the ones that are more rounded. So the first thing you're going to do is to boil your water, and then you want to let it cool down just a little bit because of course you don't want to burn yourself. And if you are a child, please get your parents' help to do this. Next you're going to take your measuring cup. You need that half cup. And it might be helpful if you had actually the liquid measuring cups which have a spout that you can pour. You might find that a little bit easier. And you're going to pour the 1/2 cup into as many containers as you want colors. Then you're going to take your vinegar and your teaspoon, and you just want to measure 1 teaspoon and pour that into each one of your colors. Now, as far as the colors go, you can look on the back of your food coloring boxes, at least the McCormick food color that I used, and it gives you a chart that shows you how many drops of each of the different colors you need to get your desired result. So I'm going to show you pictures and explain how I made 2 of my eggs. So for the first example here, I did not put any bands on initially to preserve any white color. I just dyed the entire egg yellow. And the length of time that you need to leave each egg in the dye really depends on how dark you want it to be. For the lighter colors like the yellow, pink, and orange, I would say you would probably leave those in maybe about 5 to 10 minutes. But for the darker colors, if you just wanted a lighter version, really if you dip it in for just a minute or so, you'll notice how it's really going to pick up the color. So I know for mine, a lot of the darker colors I only left in for maybe about 30 seconds to 2 minutes. After my egg was completely yellow, I took it out and let it dry. So that's important. You want to make sure you leave your egg dry completely in between colorings. So then I took my rubber bands and I placed them on the egg in a diagonal position. So I did use 2 bands right next to each other for this one, which is a little different than I did on my other ones. So I placed the 2 bands diagonally to the right, and then when I put the next bands on, I placed the 2 bands diagonally to the left. And I tried to make the X cross right in the center of the egg. And then I just repeated that again. I took 2 more bands and put them diagonally to the right, and I just spaced it out maybe about, a quarter of an inch or less, maybe even like an eighth of an inch away from the other bands. And then the same thing diagonally to the left, and then one more set I did diagonally to the right and then to the left. And that's how I achieved my pattern. Then I took the egg with the rubber bands and I placed it in my blue color. So again, I didn't leave it in the blue for very long. I would say maybe about a minute. And then I took it out, and you want to let that completely dry again. And then when that is dry, you can take either a pair of scissors and cut the bands off, or if you wanted to, you could just carefully remove them by hand. And then you can see here what my result was. I think that the blue turned out more of a greenish blue, since we had the yellow to start with, and we all know that yellow and blue make green, so it was kind of that bluish green result. In my second example, I did place 2 bands on the egg before I colored it, so those strips remained white. So any bands you place on initially will have the white underneath. And then I placed that into yellow dye. So when the egg was completely dry, I took 2 additional rubber bands, and I did that same diagonal pattern, but this time you can see I was only doing single bands, not double, as I showed you in the previous example. So I placed those on, so now any bands that I would have placed on this layer would remain yellow. Then I placed the egg with the 4 bands on into the orange dye, and I let that sit probably about a good 5 minutes. And I should note that you do want to keep turning the egg just so that it gets evenly colored on all sides. And then I remove the egg from the dye, and again, you do want to make sure every time that you let it dry completely. I then placed 2 final bands on the egg, and that preserved the orange color, so whatever band you would add on this layer would remain orange underneath. And I would like to note that occasionally the bands do slide just a little bit. I did have 1 or 2 occasions where the band slid completely off, but for the most part they stayed in place. Now you can see on this one here, when I dyed it orange, you can see that the one band did shift slightly, so you will notice that in the final pattern. And then once I had all 6 bands on, I did place that in my final color, which was pink, and I did leave that in there for at least 5 minutes. It might have been even closer to 10, to get that nice bright color. And then I removed it from the dye and I let it dry completely. When it was completely dry, I did remove the rubber bands, so you can see here what the final result was. So you can see that this really bright pink color was the main portion of the egg, but then if you look at the strips, you can see that there were some yellow, some orange, and some white. And again, you can see where it slightly went askew there, but I think in the end it didn't really matter. It didn't affect the overall look. I think it still turned out pretty neat. I hope that everyone loves their new rubber band decorated Easter eggs. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. You can post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page. I can't wait to see all the different designs and colors that people come up with. And please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that way you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please post your pictures there too and leave me comments. And if you do post pictures on Instagram, don't forget to tag me. And you can also feel free to subscribe to each of those as well. Thanks for watching!